It's time to fasten your seatbelt and rev up that engine. It's time to go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is your weekly look inside the world of NASCAR. Now live, here's the pit crew, Steve Ronkowitz and Charlie Turner.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go on Pit Row, boys.
Yep, Steve Ronkowitz and me, Charlie Turner, and him, Dan Beaver. Dan, how are you down in Texas today?
I'm doing great. Just staying out of the heat and making it through the middle part of the week.
Getting over your excitement from all the action at Kentucky Speedway last Saturday night?
Yeah, I've woken up. Had a couple of cups of coffee since then. I'm good to go.
All right. So anyway, again, I'm Charlie Turner. This is our live weekly NASCAR Hangout on Pit Row. Hopefully you're watching this on our Facebook page or YouTube or Google Plus, something like that, on our website. We're here every week, and we're going to talk a little bit about NASCAR and about not just about Kentucky Speedway, but I guess we probably ought to start it off that way. I think our esteemed, currently absent partner Beth Ann made the call, and I think she picked Keselowski last week, didn't she? I know Dan picked Logano.
She picked whoever Steve picked.
Who'd you have, Steve? Did you have Larson again last week?
No, I didn't take Kyle Larson last week, but I'm trying to think who I did pick. Boy, that was a long time ago.
We really need to write these down. Probably.
Well, they don't let me have a pen, you know. I mean, it's a sharp object. So.
only on weekends and holidays.
Yeah, exactly. So I get one on Friday.
Oh, there you go. Good.
We do this on Friday. I'll get a pen and I could write it down.
Awesome.
I don't know. The only it doesn't really matter. I mean, not only do I not remember who I picked, but there was nobody at Kentucky to see that he won either. So.
Yeah. How big a story is that? We couldn't fill the field out for a Sprint Cup race for the first time in who knows how long, 42 cars, and then couldn't fill the stands up at all. That doesn't bode well, I think, in general for NASCAR in general.
Well, I think
and
that's
for Kentucky Speedway in particular.
Isn't that only the third race there?
I think it's the fourth. I think it's the fourth.
Fourth race.
It's the whole story. The reason they gave Kentucky the race, other than the fact that Bruton Smith was owed a track or a race somewhere, and he wanted to get Kentucky in there, and he just bought it from whoever had it all those years, was that they were going to get these great crowds because this central Midwest area was starved for NASCAR, and they were close to Cincinnati and close to Louisville and close to Nashville, and they're going to draw all these people there, and it ain't happening.
It did for 1 year, and then the problem
they couldn't get in. I mean, they showed up and couldn't get in. Maybe those people are still mad.
They're still trying to get in. That's what the problem is.
I was at that race, and actually when we left right before the end of it because we didn't want to get caught up in whatever was going on the way out. So we left with maybe 50 laps to go. There were people still trying to get in, still in line. They could not get out of the line that was going into the racetrack at the end of the race. Oh, man.
Yeah, and then
you talk about postal. There were some people there ready to,
And then year number 2, I think it was like 105 or 106 degrees, something like that. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. But if you're a fan and you show up and you're allowed to take a cooler in, but you can't take beer in, which pissed a bunch of people off because it's 105 degrees and they don't understand that drinking alcohol will make it worse.
Yeah, I'm sitting out here and I might die. I might at least want to die drunk,
That's right. Exactly. If I'm going to die, let me die drunk in a hurry and unconscious. So.
And then last year it was the rain out, so folks had to go home and not see it run on Monday.
Right.
So they've had 3 tough races.
Exactly.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier. And the one they had last week isn't going to help their case any, since it was less than exciting.
Yeah, unless you're a Penske fan or a Brad Keselowski fan, there wasn't much to cheer for there.
The only thing I'll say, let me say this about that a little bit, though. This was the first time in a while that, Keselowski really dominated that race. No doubt about that. But then when he gave up the lead for that last pit stop and Kyle Busch took the lead, there was at least finally some excitement at that race to see whether or not he was going to be able to run down Kyle. And, for people who are Keselowski fans, the outcome was great for them. But that part of the race, at least, that last, I don't know what it was, 40 laps or 50 laps, whatever it was. At least that had some excitement to it, and you were wondering whether he was going to be able to catch him, whether anything was going to happen, or whether Kyle was going to be Kyle and just kind of run away with it. So there was a little bit of drama with it. I'll give.
Yeah, and Kyle being Kyle, but also whether or not the aerodynamics package would actually allow some passing there at the front of the pack. And we did at least get that, so that bodes well for future races.
But with all that being said, I would rather have him run at Road America than run at Kentucky.
Well, either Road America or I'd like to see him run at Iowa. I mean, they couldn't draw. One of the things they've always said about Iowa is they won't get crowds there. I bet they'd get more people at Iowa Speedway than they had at Kentucky.
Yeah, Iowa needs to be on. More short tracks need to be on. More diversity needs to be on. I had no problem with the race at Kentucky, and I wouldn't take a race away from Kentucky. I'd take it away from one of the other tracks that have two. That's been my dead horse for years. Nobody deserves two tracks or two races. While there are tracks out there that are just clamoring for it in parts of the country that want racing, like Iowa, that should be the exception and not the rule that tracks have two races. But it's not the history of NASCAR. The tracks have been loyal to NASCAR. NASCAR has been loyal to the tracks. You got to appreciate that. But now, with them making so many other changes, I think this is one change they could make.
What do you think the most likely next track to be added to the schedule is going to be? I mean,
whichever one.
NASCAR didn't ISC just buy Iowa Speedway?
Yeah.
I thought so.
No,
I mean, that'll be the next one, I think.
No, hold on. ISC did not buy it.
Right. NASCAR did.
NASCAR bought it.
Oh, so it's not the track division of NASCAR? It was just NASCAR?
Correct.
I didn't know that. Okay, tell me about what's the story there? How did I miss that?
It's potato, but
No, it's not. I mean, I think that's significant. I don't know why.
Well, it's
there's got to be a reason they did it that way.
Yeah, it's max of Iowa needed the cash, and NASCAR didn't want to lose the venue for trucks and nationwide. I wouldn't be surprised to see it get handed over to ISC in the next 3 or 4 years, but for now, it's a NASCAR property. And it's kind of weird that NASCAR is owning a track. I mean, they've always kept that cutout with ISC, and I think it's a legitimate cutout. I don't think NASCAR really needs to own tracks. I think it's part of the problem with IndyCar and IMS all those years back that everything's just got so muddy with what's a track, what's the sanction, how do you balance those things. So I don't think it's something NASCAR wants to do long term, but I think they needed a bailout. I'm guessing.
The big thing that NASCAR has said about Iowa is that it doesn't have enough seats to be able to hold a cup race, but hell, all these other racetracks are taking out enough seats. You can just bust them over there and rebuild them.
You could fix that really easy. That's what Bruton Smith did at Kentucky. Supposedly the same thing there.
Right.
They hold seats in, I think, from Atlanta maybe, to fill that out.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, that's an easy problem to fix if you get the date. I mean, you get the date, you can buy seats, whatever, put them in there. But I just think with the crowds I saw there that I have to believe that Iowa would draw as many as fans. Maybe that's not a good enough answer. But where else do you go? If you don't go to Iowa to add a track, where do you add? The Mick Yard doesn't exist anymore, and I love that name.
Well, I mean, there's a couple other places that you could go. I don't know that they.
How about Irwindale Speedway in California? I'd like that one.
Well, Irwindale would be another one. One that got a lot of press for a long time and just reopened back up was Nashville Super Speedway. But the discussion there was, you know what? If you wanted to add a race in the Nashville area, still to this day, they'd be better off putting it at the fairgrounds. You'd have better racing. It'd be more exciting. You'd probably get more fans in there. Because of the location, when they built Nashville Super Speedway, they built it out in the middle of flipping nowhere, and people from Nashville still won't go there. So excitement of racing, getting crowds, Nashville Fairgrounds would be the place to do it as well, I think.
Yeah, I've got friends who live out towards Nashville Super Speedway, and it is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, and literally, and Nashville was growing by leaps and bounds, but it did not grow in that direction, and that's the big kicker, was that it grew, but in the opposite direction of where they built that speedway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would think Nashville would be a market they would like to have.
Well, I think so, and to Dan's point, most of these racetracks don't need 2 venues a year. I mean, I could throw out, everybody could throw out, I guess, a couple of exceptions to that. I would say Las Vegas and Daytona would be the only 2 that I would consider really could hold 2 venues without a whole lot of trouble. Daytona, just because of the iconic value of it, but realistically, if people want to go someplace to a race, to actually have a vacation to a racetrack, Las Vegas seems to make the most sense of any place in the country.
Yeah, I'd hate to see Bristol lose its second date. And typically you get into those conversations, and it's your favorite tracks that you don't want to see lose that second date.
Exactly.
But then that's what the Chase is for. Put those races, have 26 unique races in the first part of the schedule, Las Vegas being one of them, Daytona 500 being the other, and then add the second Daytona date, that second Las Vegas date in the Chase. And
rotate them around.
Yeah, and give some thought to what those races are, not just this is what happened to be stuck at the end of the schedule when we came up with this idea to have the Chase, so we're going to lop it off here and pretend that that's a playoff. If you're going to make it a playoff, make it a playoff. Make it so that the drivers can have to showcase their talent.
You know, Mike Helton was asked about that earlier last week, I believe, or one of the questions he was asked was whether NASCAR would add a road course to the Chase, and he said not at this time. Keselowski was asked about it. He said he didn't think it was a good idea because it's kind of a Keselowski called it kind of a wild card. I don't think he used wild card word, but he was describing what we refer to as a wild card race as too chancy as far as what goes on, and you're not going to define the best drivers. I disagree with that. I think I like Dan's idea of 26 unique races in the regular season, and then if you're going to double up in the Chase. I think that would be a pretty cool way to do it.
And I don't want to hear anybody talk about there being a wild card in the Chase so long as Talladega's there. I mean, if you're going to have Talladega in the Chase, there is no argument that says that you shouldn't have
a wild card. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have less chance of being knocked out of a road course race and not being able to have a good finish than ever at Talladega. Talladega could be lap 1 and you're done. I mean, it's just the roll of the dice there, depending on who you're next to, who's around you, and how stupid they want to be. So, as long as you're going to have people who aren't in the Chase racing along with those who are in the Chase at Talladega, the chance for something stupid happening are a millionfold.
Yeah, that's true, but I think you could put the 10 chasers out there and something stupid would happen too. It's just
maybe faster.
Yeah.
It might happen quicker.
And the idea of having a playoff that actually looks and feels like a playoff, so long as I've got this knockout, they're going to stick with this knockout formula for a while, then it really doesn't matter what races are there. You're not going to get – the first segment is going to be the one where everybody gets positioned and shows their strength. After that, there's a lot of luck that's going to go into who makes it to the next round and then who makes it to the final round. It's not a playoff. It's a knockout formula. We don't know what it's going to be like yet, so we really can't badmouth it yet. But you don't have that representative feel that we used to have with the full season. You either like the points or didn't like the points. At least whoever got there and was in the points lead at the end, they had to be good everywhere. Now they just have to be good at Homestead. Someone just has to be good at Homestead.
Yep.
And lucky up to that point.
Yeah, to me it kind of feels like a 9-week long Saturday night racing schedule. It's just a bunch of heat races. That's what it amounts to.
A little bit, yeah.
To find the final four. I don't know. I think that just you're right. They will have at least 4 drivers involved theoretically at the end of the thing, and that'll be an interesting day. That certainly will be an interesting day. I don't know that it crowns your. I think you might be creating asterisk material for stats going forward, though. I can't believe that you're going to consider that the same type of championship as up until now, or even pre-chase.
Well, the one thing is, at least you'll have 4 people who have a chance to win the championship on the last day of the race, or last day of the season, which you don't have now. Generally, you pretty much come down to 1, 2, maybe 3, because everybody else has eliminated themselves anyhow. Regardless of how they get to that point, at Homestead, the majority of the field that have, gotten into the chase have eliminated themselves throughout the way we had done it in the past anyhow. So not a huge difference, but it is kind of, I don't know, it's a bit of a roll of the dice. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but there was a logical way to go about this, rather than what they did. I've never thought that the chase contenders should be racing against the non-chase contenders in terms of points. They needed a separate point structure for the chase contenders, and if they had that, and then they could manipulate that chase points structure in such a way that they eliminated some of those peaks and valleys. You got a driver who finishes, Denny Hamlin slaps the wall, blows up, whatever, and finishes 43rd. He gets 1 point, where the other guy's getting 43. They shouldn't be counted against all those other non-chasers.
I understand what you're saying.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think a guy that finishes last should get 12 points or 1 point against 12. I don't know, or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you are in the chase, if you are in the playoff system, unlike every other sports playoff system, the rest of the field is no longer involved. In racing, the rest of the field has an outcome as a result of how the outcome is going to be. And I don't think that is necessarily right either. You've earned your way into those final 10 spots or those final 12 spots or whatever they are, on any given year. And I think, therefore, you have earned that right to be able to get at least 14th place points, or 12 or 10 or whatever the number is for whatever year.
Yeah, and then you get down to that final race, and there's still going to be some big swing between 1st and 12th, but there's not going to be as big a swing between 1st and 5th. And you got the potential to make something up. And maybe that's graduate the points so that they're 1 through 12 for the first 4 races, and then the points get to be more, or gets to be where you can catch up, but you still have an advantage if you were able to build an advantage. I don't know. They're not going to listen to us anyway, so.
They haven't yet.
keep throwing these great ideas out there, and my phone's not ringing.
Beth Ann is here. Beth Ann, who did you choose to, or who did you pick to win at Kentucky? We can't remember.
The winner.
That's what I thought she had Keselowski.
And I picked Kes too, didn't I, Beth? Yeah. See, there you go. I'm a brilliant person as well. See.
And I had Kyle Busch. I think Dan had Joey Logano. So we were all actually pretty smart last week. There's something wrong. Must have been a shift in the Earth's crust or something. I don't know.
I should have chosen the paramedics. They were the true winner.
It says a lot that my pick was one of the 2 dominant cars and lost a cylinder at the end. Look up the hashtag #BeefJinx and you'll
Did they ever find it?
All right, hey, we're about halfway through this live NASCAR Hangout on Pit Row, and we don't want to forget to mention our little contest we have every week for the Shell Saver Card Comment of the Week. I'll put last week's winner up on the website, Facebook page sometime tomorrow. I still kind of between like 3 people. I think we're going to have to do that random draw thing. There were a lot of good comments last week, but the question this week, and I think you guys will enjoy this question. we talked last week, and Dan and I have talked repeatedly about how the race this coming weekend at Daytona used to be called the Firecracker 400. It's now called the Coke Zero 400, presented by Coca-Cola, sponsored by Sprite, and brought to you by Diet Coke. We just don't find that to be as compelling as Firecracker 400. So I put up on the Facebook page, just to kind of feed the comment stream, what's your favorite race name? What's of all the races that have been named in the past? What's your favorite? What do you guys like? Well, let's do our Shell read first, then we'll talk about what we like.
Well, you can submit your Shell Saver Card holder comment of the day and take home a $50 Shell gift card. Anytime Joey Logano, driver of that 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Fusion, wins a 2014 points race, Shell Saver Card holders can save 22 cents per gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-rich gasoline or Shell diesel just by using that Shell Saver Card on the Wednesday or Wednesday, if you prefer, after the race. Offer valid up to 25 gallons. You can go to shell.us/Wednesday for more details. And looked like 22 cents a gallon could have been a saving grace, but it was close, but no cigar.
Well, we've had a couple of those winners this year, and I don't think we're done yet. I think Logano looks to me like he's got a couple more wins in his in that 22 car. So who's your favorite? What's your favorite race name of all time? If you pick one of them, you can pick a current one, whatever. Or maybe you like the Coke Zero 400 brought to you by Coke and Sprite and whatever.
I like that they all had official names for a while. Pennsylvania 500, Pocono 500, Dover, whatever, Delaware 500. My favorite would probably be then the Space City 300, the one and only race run at Myers Speedway in South Houston.
Space City 300?
The Space City 300.
I like that. I'd forgotten about that one. I probably knew it at one time, but I hadn't thought about that one. Steve, what's your favorite?
Oh, anything that you can say in one breath.
The Brickyard.
I don't know if I ever have a favorite, but I do think that they missed the boat on this whole thing, because why couldn't they have been the Brickyard? I liked it when it was the Brickyard presented by who is it, Allstate or something like that. I think it was.
And then they changed it to the Allstate 400.
Allstate 400. You're right. I mean,
at the Brickyard, and that was the slippery slope when they all started to change.
Right. Why couldn't it have remained the World 600 presented by Ralphie's Chicken Dumplings or whatever, by Coke or whatever? Yeah. You know, you could have kept the Firecracker 400 brought to you by, or, you know, I think that's where that slippery slope got slipperier, and it was the greed part of it again. Yeah.
So you don't have one particular. A couple of the suggested ones on Facebook I looked at this morning. One was a current race, the Duck Dynasty 400, I guess, or 600, whatever it was. 500. 500. I thought that was actually pretty good. I don't think that's bad. I know it's sponsored, but at least it's it's not a detergent or whatever. Also saw the Great American Race. Somebody said that, although to me that's not what I was looking for. The Daytona 500 would be the name there. That's one they'll probably never change. Although as soon as I say that, it'll be called the Viagra 500 presented by at Daytona or something.
It's not badly needing the money, but they did do the Daytona 500 by STP for a year or two, I think.
I forgot.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
I forgot.
And there are some iconic branded names that I did the Coke 600. It's been that for a long time. I think you should be able to call it both things, though. Call it the World 600. Call it the Coke 600. Keep those old names. Keep that in the mix somehow.
They keep trying to keep the Southern 500, which I thought was always one of the that was one of the big races. Still, it really isn't anymore, but they seem to try to keep it, but they're not doing a very good job of it. I liked the Firecracker 400 is probably my favorite if I had to pick one, but I like the Rebel 400. I know why they don't do that one anymore, because they had to get rid of the Stars and Bars logo, but I still like the Rebel 400. It was fitting. That was at Atlanta, I think, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was.
It was Darlington, I think.
Was it Darlington?
Yeah, it was Darlington, yeah. I mean, there was one, if you look at MIS, there was one that was a sponsor name, but it sure seemed to fit well. The Champion 400 was basically sponsored by Champion Sparkplug, but, that kind of got lost in the mix. You can kind of double entendre it whichever way you wanted.
Yeah. But I think there's some iconic sponsor names that, they, to Steve's point, they fit. They are what they are, and they belong. But you can't forget that they've got a real name. That's their nickname, to me, and their real name is the Michigan 400. Or what was their other race name? I don't remember their other race name that they had to default to when they couldn't have a sponsor.
Michigan. What I do remember is when IndyCar and Champ Car first split, and Roger Penske was trying to create this new series for championship racing cars, and they remember they had the 400 or 500 mile race at Michigan that they wanted to recreate the Vanderbilt Cup race. I thought that was cool. I liked that. I mean, they're bringing back an old race name from way back. What, in the 30s was probably the last time they ran the Vanderbilt Cup for those kinds of cars. I thought that'd be cool, and that didn't last. I don't think they might have done it for 1 year.
Because you're the only one that would remember that.
I just thought it was neat. I mean, I thought, yeah, that's cool.
In my database.
If you're gonna compete with the Indianapolis 500, which is what they were doing because Tony George wouldn't let them race there, then why not try to create something else? And that's Roger Penske thinking big. I thought that was pretty cool. But I liked the Mick Yard 500 too. I thought that was pretty good.
But for the record, Michigan's two races were the Motor State 500 and the Yankee 500, 400, 600. So that was their official name.
Wow.
So Yankee 400, 500 was a direct competition for the Rebel 400.
Yeah, probably. I guess so. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, I don't remember either of those names. Do you, Steve?
I don't remember either one of them. No, not at all.
The one that doesn't make any sense is why wouldn't you have the Quaker State 400 in Pennsylvania? Why wouldn't that be one of Pocono's races? I'm like, okay, come on.
You would certainly think so.
Really?
Yeah, well, hey, I guess that's the same reason you don't have the Columbia Gas 400 in somewhere, I guess, I don't know.
All right, what else we got to talk about before we get to the fantasy picks for Dan's going to tell us exactly how to pick a plate race at Daytona. But before that,
where's my quarter?
That's our teaser for before we go to break.
We don't do breaks anymore.
Well, that's right. No wonder this
seems
so long.
We could do a break if you like.
We used to get a chance to take a break.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we do as much content in a half hour as pretty much what we did in an hour before. But yeah, that's just because we're damn good.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And don't know no better. Don't know any better.
Any other stories that I missed this week? This was kind of a quiet week in NASCAR news.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, the whole 42 car thing was kind of beat to death going into that. I don't see that as a story, really. I mean, it's great. There's not 45 teams out there that are clamoring to get into a race at Kentucky. Okay, I understand that. If it was a trend, if you only had 35 showing up, I think that would be a story. But the fact that you don't have this 43 cars, which somebody just came up with that number at some point and says, okay, we're gonna have 43. Yeah, I don't think was much of a story, really.
Well, Dan made it before you came on, Steve. Dan and I were talking. The payout in this race was Dan. Why don't you talk about that because you had the numbers.
The payouts, I think, has always been pretty low here. You had a top 10 finisher getting less than $100,000. Kurt Busch, top 15 finisher. I think Kurt Busch earned $82,000 or so. So it's not even worth $87,000. It's not worth the starting Parkers to come and get that last little pittance of $60,000. So, and that if you can't fill the stands, you're not adding to the TV revenue very much. So Kentucky's, I think, always been one of the cheaper races.
You know, and that leads to the point as well, though. If you look at what the Wood Brothers used to do, is the Wood Brothers used to find those races that had the high purses, and those were the ones that they would enter, and they would run the partial season. So you're not seeing anything different right now. Like you say, Dan, if it doesn't pay for a start and parker to show up to start and park, if the dollars don't work out, so much better for them. Stay the hell home, and they're ahead money-wise.
Yeah, but if it doesn't pay for the start and parkers to start and park, how much money are these other guys losing by getting only? Brad Keselowski won $250,000, nothing to sneeze at, but fifth place, Dale Earnhardt, $113,000. That doesn't pay for anything. But that's why you got sponsors in the sport.
Well, looks like I know Beth Ann's having connection problems. She's back with us now, so just in time to pick a winner for Daytona. But we're going to let Dan go through the fantasy advice first, and then you're going to be on the spot. You're going to have to pick somebody at Daytona. So Dan, let's talk about fantasy picks for Daytona this week.
What I always say when we come to a plate race is don't use anybody that's more predictably good value anyplace else. That changes from time to time. This year, I think, since Johnson had such a bad start to a season by Jimmy Johnson's standards, you could look at him by his record. Because Denny Hamlin's been so bad on the flat tracks, you can look at him by his record on plate tracks and start them because you're not at risk of using up allocations or overspending there. In a salary cap game, it's pretty easy to take some dark horses. We've got both the Labonte brothers here. We've got Trevor Bayne. We've got Michael Waltrip in the field. You've got at least those four guys that aren't going to cost you much at all in a salary cap game. They're in Group C and Yahoo, so it's good. It's easy to get good dark horses here, and you don't want to use up the guys that you think are going to do better later. That said, you look for trends. No one has swept the top 10. No one swept the top 10 last year, and it's been a while since we've had people sweep the top 10 on plate tracks for any length of time. Matt Kenseth, when he swept the top 5 back in 2012, he was coming off a pretty miserable 2011 season, a couple of 30-something finishes. He had a second the year before in Daytona and an 18th at Talladega, but nothing that you really would have just said, okay, he's going to dominate the plate races this year. Then he finishes third or better in all 4 races, wins 2 of them. So you're looking at Denny Hamlin doing that same thing this year. Last year, he ended with 3 30-something finishes, one of which was actually Brian Vickers getting wrecked in this race, I think, last year. But now he's got a second and a first-place finish, so I don't believe there's such thing as momentum where plate races are concerned, but there may be such thing as luck, so Hamlin's going to be one of the drivers that you're looking at. Other than that, get your coin out, flip it, and your picks are probably about as good as mine.
Don't tell anybody that. Don't ever admit that. That's your brand, man.
I'm just not taking any resresponsibility for my picks on plate tracks. Okay, but if you got to make
tell
picks,
me you got a weighted coin or something.
Well, you could at least do this. You could say you're not going to pick Kevin Harvick if there's any pit stops involved.
Yeah. If they figure out how to make this all the way through.
Yeah, that's right.
Earnhardt, he's got to be. He's not the Pied Piper still after winning.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But if you got to make picks, you got to look at the numbers and go that way. Earnhardt has got to be one of your top Group A drivers in Yahoo. He's not the Pied Piper anymore, but he did win the Daytona 500. He was extremely disappointing in Talladega. Tentative, didn't want to come to the front. When he finally did try to make a run to the front, didn't make it. But there is a difference between Daytona and Talladega, and chances are good that he's going to be back up the front again. Clint Bowyer would be my second pick. He hasn't run all that well at Daytona, but he has run well at Talladega, and I think that'll carry over. You jump down to B, and you're looking at dark horses. I've got them ranked right now: Greg Biffle, Denny Hamlin, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Jamie McMurray. Pretty much because those drivers have done well on the plate tracks. They haven't done particularly well on other tracks. McMurray keeps getting involved in accidents. Stenhouse, he's always held a steady wheel on the plate races. I think he's got a streak of top 15 finishes dating back to his Daytona 500. So those are the guys that I'm going to rank up near the top, and they're not going to be overly popular in the Yahoo game, so you're not going to you get a chance to differentiate yourself from other people's rosters, not use up somebody that is more predictable later on, and you got as good a chance of them getting to the top 10 as anyone else. Get down to Group C, you're looking at those dark horses I mentioned. Michael Walters is the most popular dark horse, so I'm going to skip over him and probably go for someone like Bobby Labonte in the number 33 car this week. David Stremme has been decent on a couple of occasions in that car. Terry Labonte in the third a couple of times, and Labonte had a shot at winning the Daytona 500 at one point. He was running near the lead till he got banged about in one of the big one crashes. So anything can happen. Just don't be dumb. Don't use up drivers who could do you good later on.
Don't be dumb.
Well, that makes me wonder whether my pick is super intelligent or dumb.
Well, what's your pick? Well, let us critique you, Obi-Wan.
You see that?
No, I can only see 4 fingers. Hold them up higher. That's 10. Picking Danica, okay. That's not any dumber than my pick. See that? See that right there?
I see 5. You need to pull back a little bit.
Let's do it this way.
Pull back a little.
Shut up and let me. Okay, pull back. Okay.
I see one. Yeah.
Quit talking when I put my fingers up. There's
3.
3. And
Dylan.
And there's 3.
Dylan.
No.
33.
33.
The 33.
Bobby Labonte.
Of course.
It's been a long time since I've been able to pick him. Dan said he's not a bad pick. I'm going dark horse, real dark horse.
Dan said nobody's a good pick.
Dan just signed out. He's never coming back.
Yeah, I think what I said was he's no worse. He's no worse a pick than anyone else, I think was what I really said.
Well, he was signing out when he saw my pick.
That sounds like the kind of compliment my wife would give me, but that's okay.
So, Dan, who's your pick?
Oh, who do I want to jinx this week? I'm going to go with Hamlin. I think there's, like I said, there's no such thing as momentum, but there is such thing as luck. So I think he wins his second plate race in a row.
Okay, well, I know Beth has been having connectivity problems all afternoon.
You should not have put her off. You should have let her choose.
She picked Michael McDowell.
She'd be okay with Michael McDowell, but that's not who she'd pick. She'd be
Okay.
Here's what I would think. After your discussion here today, I think her pick would be Greg Biffle, but I will confirm that later.
Well, good luck with that, because there's only 2 Fords that have a chance of winning any of these races. So it sure hasn't been a Roush team for the most part.
Carl Edwards has got a couple wins.
Well, okay.
A couple of weird wins.
He's not driving a Toyota yet.
Yeah. Pretty soon everyone will be.
But I don't think they're going to be able to drop Ford out of the draft, and anybody who's in the draft has a chance to win. So.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we sign out for another week?
Just enjoy the race. From the fantasy standpoint, just forget that you made any picks and enjoy the race.
Yeah.
Be glad if they don't all crash on lap 1.
Yeah, there you go.
Like
Steve?
said, I like this race. It's a fun race to watch. I like running there at night. I think it's a good time, and I will take Dan's advice and just sit there and watch it and enjoy it, and not try to write too much into it.
I liked the race too. I liked it better when they actually ran it on the 4th of July, though. And then they had the significance, and the combination of running it on the 4th of July and having it called the Firecracker 400 was a big part of my growing up years. And used to listen. I remember listening to this race and watching it on those days. So it was nostalgic for me. But I'll enjoy it. I don't. But even if I was playing fantasy, I wouldn't care, because I be so far behind at this point in the season, it wouldn't matter. So, all right, that's it for this week. We'll feel bad that Beth wasn't able to join us, but we'll try and get that connectivity thing hooked up. We were having some bandwidth issues all day today. Everybody was kind of getting a little pixelated at times, so hopefully that doesn't happen on the replay or the recording of this. But if it does, we blame it on Google. It's not my fault. All right, so thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week to talk about the aftermath of the Firecracker 400. And where do we go after that? We go to Chicago?
I believe that Chicago's 2 weeks out, I think.
Chicago's a standalone nationwide race, though, at that point. I don't know where we go next.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, that's right, Loudon. Okay, so that's it for this week. Thanks, everybody.
You've just been on Pit Row, and now you're up to speed with the best information about the world of NASCAR. Come back next week and join the pit crew, Steve and Charlie, and go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is a presentation of Bench Racing Productions.
Hey, this is David Reagan, driver of the number 6 AAA Ford Fusion, and you're listening to On Pit Row.
This is On Pit Row. On Pit Row.